Assalam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There are times in life when everything seems frozen. You make dua, you ask, you cry, and yet there is no sign. The sky remains silent, the doors remain closed, and the world around you continues without anything changing in your heart. It is in these moments that many wonder, does Allah still hear me? Has He forgotten me? But listen carefully. This silence, it's not surrender. It's a disguised divine response. It's Allah inviting you to slow down, to be still, to stop forcing things, and to observe. Yes, sometimes the greatest act of faith is to stop and trust. He says in his book, stay calm and observe the help of Allah. What if this verse were for you today? What if this video didn't just happen, but because Allah wants you to hear it now? What you are experiencing is not a punishment. It is a sacred call to calm. It is a voluntary withdrawal, orchestrated by the One who knows the invisible and sees beyond your impatience. He wants you to breathe, to look at Him through your heart, to distance yourself from the tumult of the world, to better hear His guidance. Don't rush. Don't try to understand everything right away. There are answers that Allah gives only to those who dare to be silent within themselves, those who agree to trust Him in the dark. So I ask you this question. What if your current silence was the echo of a blessing in the making? Perhaps Allah is teaching you the wisdom of stillness, the power of silence, the beauty of patience. Perhaps by putting you on pause, He is protecting your future, preparing something you couldn't handle if you were too busy talking, moving, wanting. In this video, I'm going to take you on a spiritual journey where you'll understand why Allah asks you to be still, why He acts in the shadows when you think He's absent, and most importantly, what's really happening behind the scenes of your ordeal. What you're about to discover could change the way you experience moments of waiting, doubt, and silence. Hang in there. Stay with me until the end. Because Allah is about to reveal to you what you have never seen before. And it might just be the answer your heart was waiting for. There is a verse in the Quran whose sweetness is a hidden power. Do not fear, be calm, and look to the salvation that Allah will grant you. Inspired by the scene between Musa alayhi salam and his people, facing the sea and Pharaoh's army. This is not just an invitation, it is an order, a reminder that calmness is a divine strategy. When the Banu Israel saw Pharaoh's army behind them and the sea before them, they cried out, "We're going to be caught." But what did Musa say? He didn't panic. He didn't run. He didn't argue. He said with absolute confidence, "Kala, never. My Lord is with me. He will guide me." Quran 26:62. This moment of apparent impasse was actually a scene orchestrated by Allah to show them His greatness. So why does Allah ask us to remain calm in the storm? Because it is in the stillness of the believer that manifests itself the omnipotence of the Creator. When you can no longer move forward, when you can no longer do anything humanly, Allah says to you, stop, stay there. Look what I'm going to do. The world constantly pushes us to act, speak, fight, and rush forward. But sometimes Allah invites you to sit back and trust. This is where the believer understands that tranquility is not a weakness, but a supreme act of faith. To be quiet is to say internally, Ya Rab, I don't understand what you're doing, but I'll let you do it. When you feel chaos around you, when the pressure becomes unbearable, remember that your silence can be your shield. It can be the place where Allah pours out His peace, His light, His rahmah. Don't think your calm is a waste of time. This is a prophetic posture. Musa Maryam, Ibrahim, all had to go through this ordeal of imposed calm. Think of Maryam. May Allah bless her and grant her peace. Isolated, pregnant without ever having known a man, rejected, judged, alone. And Allah said to her, "Shake the trunk of the palm tree." Quran 19:25. But why ask her that, when a tree trunk doesn't shake and she was exhausted? Because sometimes Allah is just asking you for a symbolic gesture, a silent faith, a simple submission, and He does the rest. Have you ever been in that position, where you're too tired to continue, but something inside you keeps pushing you to stay standing? This is where the verse comes in. Don't be afraid, stay calm, observe. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to do one thing. Do not move until Allah tells you to. So today, if you feel stuck, if you are experiencing a situation where nothing is changing, if you pray and everything seems silent, perhaps it is because Allah tells you, be still. What I am preparing for you is beyond anything you could bring about yourself. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and let Allah guide you in silence. The silence of Allah is one of the deepest and most misunderstood realities by the human heart. When a servant makes dua, cries in the night, implores day after day, and receives no apparent sign, restlessness sets in. Silence is believed to be rejection, absence, abandonment. Yet, it is in this very silence that the true relationship with Allah is born. What you do not see moving on the outside may be reorganizing itself on the inside. Allah is never silent without reason. He observes. He readjusts your heart. He educates your soul. He purifies what your words do not express. And often, this silence is the answer itself, but in a form that your impatience cannot yet recognize. The sincere believer knows this moment of emptiness. He continues to pray, but no longer feels anything. He moves forward, but the doors do not open. He asks, but the sky seems deaf. And it is precisely in this moment that the ego begins to murmur. Why doesn't it change? Why does everything seem frozen? These are the thoughts that test the solidity of your faith. For Allah does not seek to make you doubt. He seeks to dispel all the illusions that you held more dear than Him. He removes easy emotions, quick answers, visible solutions, so that you are no longer attached to anything but His presence, even if it manifests itself only in a heavy and prolonged silence. There are seasons when you will understand nothing. You will not know why this trial lasts, why nothing is unblocked, why your heart is heavy. And you may believe that your faith is weak, but no. That is precisely where your faith takes root. When everything that carried you outwardly has disappeared, and you decide to remain standing, even without feeling, even without seeing. That is true tawakkul, remaining faithful to Allah when the heart no longer feels His sweetness, but the soul remains firm, silent, and confident. You don't need to interpret every silence. You don't need to imagine that every day, without an answer, is a verdict against you. What you're experiencing may be a purification, a stripping away, a divine way of reorienting your outlook. Allah doesn't always want to fill you with what you want. He wants to educate you first so that you become capable of carrying what He has planned for you. And this doesn't happen in noise. It happens in prolonged silences, in lonely nights, in moments when you think you're alone, but He is closer to you than your breath. When Allah is silent, it is sometimes because you are already on the right path. He does not need to repeat what He has already taught you. He wants you to move forward, without constantly depending on signs. It is a sign of trust He knows that you can cross this valley without illumination, because He has placed within you the necessary inner light. And you doubt yourself, while He does not doubt what He has placed in your heart. This is why He is sometimes silent, because He elevates you without you realizing it. Look at your life. Remember those moments when you thought it was all over, when you said to yourself, I can't take it anymore. And yet, here you are. You're still breathing. You're still moving forward. And if you look closely, you'll see that it's in the quietest moments that you've grown the most. You may not have noticed it at the time, but your soul has grown stronger. And what you have become now is the fruit of those painful silences, those tearless prayers, those unanswered nights. So today, do not despise Allah's silence any longer. Embrace it. Rest in it. Know that if Allah does not speak to you, it is because He is listening. If He does not show you anything, it is because He is already acting. Perhaps silence is actually preparation. Perhaps He is preparing you for something you could not yet bear today. Perhaps He is building a miracle that needs your stillness to settle. And perhaps one day you will look back and say, it was in that silence that it all began. There are times in life when Allah takes you away from everything. He removes you from certain people, certain places, certain habits. You don't understand why this is happening, but everything you knew, everything that made you feel secure, begins to slowly crumble. The things you thought you had control over slip away. The plans you had made dissolve. You feel a loss of direction. But this withdrawal is not a punishment. It is not abandonment. It is a divine refocusing. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, takes you back, so that you can finally see what you could not discern up close.
As long as you are too stuck in your situation, you have no perspective. You analyze with emotion, with fear, with haste. You want to understand everything right away. But Allah does not work in haste. He acts in time, in silence, in mystery. And that is why He sometimes removes you from the scene of your own life, so that you observe from afar, calm your heart, stop worrying, and understand that what escapes you is not necessarily bad. On the contrary, it is often the escape from illusions, from futile attachments, from overly narrow human plans. Stepping back is a school where you learn to trust without seeing anything, a school where you lose some battles only to discover that the war wasn't there, a school where you feel alone so that you understand that the only true companionship is Allah. When you distance yourself, you are not less loved, you are guided. When you are pushed aside, you are not forgotten. You are selected for a transformation that others can neither see nor understand. And if you accept this distance, it becomes light. It becomes clarity. It becomes a source of peace. How many times have we prayed for direction, for an answer, for a miracle, all while remaining attached to what we believe to be the solution? Allah, in His mercy, begins by removing what you hold too tightly. He takes it from you gently or abruptly, but always with wisdom. And in this emptiness, you find yourself naked before yourself. You cry, you search, you no longer know what to do. And then, slowly, like a morning that arises silently, you begin to understand. You see things you had never seen. You discern signs you were unaware of. You sense truths you would never have grasped without this distance. It's only with hindsight that you see the bigger picture. As long as you're glued to the detail, you panic, you scream, you accuse, you collapse. But when you agree to step back, even for a moment, Allah shows you that the detail was part of an immense fresco that you couldn't have imagined. And that day, you understand why He kept you away. You realize that the wound was a detour, that failure was a protection, that waiting was a filter, and that the void was a space in which Allah wanted to place something much greater. It takes courage to step back. It takes faith
not to force things. It takes submission, not to insist on paths that fate has already blocked. But those who step back peacefully will one day see clearly what the impatient have never understood. Stepping back, in the language of Allah, is never an escape. It is a perspective. It is wisdom. It is an answer to a question your heart has not yet formulated. You are not lost. You are simply being repositioned. You have not been ejected. You have been displaced. Allah loves you too much to leave you where you were. So He is tearing you away from what was comfortable to give you what is aligned with your soul. What you see as a fall may be an upgrade. What you experience as exclusion may be a reorientation. What you feel as estrangement may be a higher point of view. For Allah never pushes you away without a reason. He pushes you away to better enlighten you. There comes a time when you've tried everything. You've prayed, you've acted, you've waited, you've spoken, you've asked for advice, you've been patient, you've made every effort. And despite all this, nothing changes. The problem remains. The pain persists. Solutions seem to move further away. And then, in that precise moment, something invisible happens. You're no longer the one doing the doing. You're no longer the one carrying the burden. It's Allah. When you stop moving, when you stop forcing yourself, when you finally lay down the burden, Allah begins to act in your place. Not because of your exhaustion, but because of your submission. Because you understand that your role ends where His power begins. It's hard to give up, to stop trying to fix everything yourself. It's painful to accept that despite your best efforts, there are things you can't control. But it's there, precisely there, that you enter the realm of miracles. When you give up before Allah, it's not a failure. It's an elevation. For He doesn't want your pride, your performance, or your control. He wants your heart that sincerely says, I don't know what to do anymore, so I'll let you do it. And in this silent confession, you finally open up the space necessary for Him to fully intervene. Allah does not work in tumult. He loves hearts that surrender. He loves souls that recognize their limits. That is why He sometimes allows you to reach the point of saturation, not to break you, but to make you realize that you are not made to carry it alone. There is immense wisdom in voluntary inaction. It is not laziness. It is conscience. It is pure faith. It is the choice to no longer struggle against the divine will, to no longer insist where He has closed the doors, to no longer knock where He has chosen silence. When you choose not to move, it's not indifference. It's an inner posture. It's the acceptance that if Allah doesn't allow things to move forward, then you won't move without Him. And that changes everything. Because you move from nervous agitation to spiritual peace. You move from mental pressure to letting go. And in that space of rest, Allah installs His strength. He begins to move things silently. You may not see it yet, but everything is being reorganized. What you thought was fixed is opening up, not by your hand, but by His will. The Prophet and his companions experienced this. There were battles they won without having to lift a sword. Openings that were made without a single human plan being able to bring them about. Miraculous reversals, whose only cause was total submission to divine decree. This is what you may be experiencing today. You are at a standstill, and you think nothing is happening. But what you don't see is that the heavens are working, the angels are moving, the plan is unfolding. Allah is the one who opens without a key, who gives unconditionally, who transforms without warning. But He does so the moment your heart stops fighting His will. It's not a matter of merit, it's a matter of alignment. He waits for your inner silence to finally say, I trust you. And from there, things move. Sometimes slowly, sometimes abruptly, but always perfectly. Because what Allah does, even if you don't understand it, is always better than you could have imagined. So if today you are still, if you feel like you've been pushed aside, if everything seems to have stopped, don't be afraid. Maybe you are exactly where you need to be. Maybe this apparent calm is actually an invisible promise. Maybe Allah is already at work, and He just wants you to be still while the miracle takes place. And then one day, something changes. It's not always visible on the outside. It's not always a grand announcement or a spectacular reversal. Sometimes it's a detail, a sudden calming in your heart, a certainty that settles gently, without you understanding why. You wake up one morning and feel the pain ease, the weight shift, the fear give way to a strange confidence. That's where the answer begins. That's where you begin to see what the silence was building all along. What you thought was motionless, frozen, forgotten, was actually forming in the invisible. When you obey this silence, when you agree not to force, when you remain in waiting without anger, something happens that only the soul feels. Allah begins to open doors for you that you had never thought to enter. He takes you in directions you never even suspected. And it is not always a spectacular deliverance. Sometimes it is an understanding, a realization, an inner relief that is worth more than 1,000 external solutions. You understand then that everything had a meaning, that the void taught you what words could never have explained. What you see at that moment is not just a solution, it is a revelation. You realize that Allah's silence was filled with messages, that your waiting was preparation, that your calm was purification. You look back and see that every moment of anguish had a purpose. Every delay was protection, every withdrawal was refinement, and every silence a secret language between you and Him. What you see, what you feel, what you are going through at that moment, it is living proof that Allah never forgets those who keep silent to listen to Him. And what He shows you at this precise moment is not a simple solution. It is a mirror. He shows you what you have become thanks to this trial. You are more patient, wiser, less rushed, more attentive. You have learned to trust, even in the darkness. You have understood that just because you see nothing does not mean nothing is happening. You have learned to look with the eyes of the heart, to listen without hearing, to move forward even without an answer. And this, no external victory can ever equal. When you reach this point, you no longer need loud signs. You no longer need things to move quickly. You have understood that the true miracle is not that things change, but that you changed while they remained the same. And then, you know. You know that you have been guided. You know that you have never been alone. You know that Allah's silence was sacred ground. And in your heart, without a word, you say thank you to Him. Because He has shown you what cannot be bought, what cannot be said, what cannot be explained.